available, that means the opportunities because of the technological changes. That means technological opportunities are available in all the countries of the world. Right? This is the theory. That means whatever technological opportunity is there, whatever technological intervention is there, or you can say whatever technological development is there, and that innovation, that creativity is available to all the countries of the world. This is exogenous theory of Robert Solow. But now Paul Romer, he in fact invented endogenous theory. What he said is, when technology is available for all the countries, then while some of the poorer countries are developing, making use of the technology, and some of the countries are not able to develop, so there are wide variations from one country to other country, and he says technological change is endogenous. That means the market of ideas doesn't work by itself, it needs intervention. That means when some organization is inventing something, the intervention in the form of intellectual property rights, patent rights, they are required. When there are patent rights, when they are intellectual property rights, then the organizations will spend money because they will have exclusive right to use that technology. So therefore, as per his theory, the technological change is endogenous, that is emanates within the organization. That means markets tend to not adequately provide for R&D, it requires certain state interventions. That means when certain state interventions are there and when certain patent laws are there, that means when intellectual property is protected, then the countries will invest and subsequently it will lead to innovation. So therefore, the technological change is endogenous, very important. So the Paul Romer theory is endogenous theory, you can say, and he discounted the exogenous theory of Robert Solow, and in fact both got the Nobel Prizes. And this particular person, Paul Romer, he is talking about endogenous theory, right? So some interventions are required. That means the companies without patent laws, without the government interventions, they may not invest, and if they do not invest, what happens? Technological change may not come if they do not invest. So therefore, certain interventions are required from the government. That is what is this Paul Romer theory, right? And second is William North's emphasis on climate change, and he is working on the issue of sustainability. What he says is, economic activity affects the climate. Absolutely correct. So he developed integrated assessment models. That means these models can be used to assess the consequences of various policy interventions. That means you should not see development in isolation. The GDP growth may have adverse consequences, right? And here they have to integrate the policies of the government with the effect on the climate change. In fact, North has showed that the best way to deal with the problem is imposition of carbon taxes. But global consensus on carbon tax remains elusive even now. So therefore, here these two are honored, one for technological change, that means endogenous, then second one is with regard to integrating climate change into the GDP analysis, or you can say integrated assessment models which can be used to assess the consequences of various policy interventions, right? I hope you are clear about the Nobel winners for this year's economic sciences. Let us look at the second one. This is about arrest the exodus. This is about migration. Fortunately, now it is stopped, and one important aspect is this migration within the country and international migration. These two are important aspects. Certainly, they deserve 360-degree view by indicating all the facets. Certainly, we will try to do 360-degree view, and let us start this discussion with the preliminary point of critically analyze reasons for attacks on the What are various reasons? Probably this question may not be asked directly in the examination, but you should know this preliminary aspect to answer higher order questions. So, to answer any higher order question in UPSC examination, you should have clear idea about the fundamentals. So, critically analyze various reasons for attacks on migrant workers. And here there was horrific rape of a toddler, small child, and this was allegedly done by a migrant worker, and it happened in Sabarkantha district of Gujarat. And subsequently there have been incidents, that means revenge attacks on the migrant workers. Huge exodus was taking place out of northern Gujarat of Hindi speaking migrant workers. Fortunately, now it is contained and normalcy is restored. And in this context, please look at the map, important cities of Gujarat, and let us look at the recent two news items. Recently, there was worldwide survey, and when you look at Indians, here around 50% felt the biggest problem or biggest worry today is unemployment. In our country, for almost 50%, the biggest worry is unemployment, followed by security issues and economic instability. But unemployment is the biggest problem. This is as per the worldwide survey, and this depicts for India globally. If you see the red line, this is globally. Globally, unemployment is not that issue as in India. Globally, average if you see, around 23-24% said unemployment is the issue. But if you look at India, close to 50% said unemployment is the issue. So, first of all, you should conclude unemployment is the real cause of worry for Indian youth. Second point is, if you look at quarter century after liberalization and prior to liberalization, quarter century after liberalization, of course, growth is increased, but job creation is not commensurate. In fact, if you compare here the employment growth prior to the economic liberalization, please look into this. We have discussed previously also. So, please look into this. The employment growth is not commensurate with economic growth. This is for the past 25 years. So, that means you can conclude it is more or less jobless growth, and here employment is the real cause of worry, and employment growth is not incommensurate with GDP growth. And because of these two reasons, now a small incident is leading to big clashes. And here look at the following information. Based on the data since 2011, the economic survey pointed out Gujarat along with Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, West Bengal, they are the highest net in-migration of workers. That means in-migration minus out-migration. If you calculate that, the net in-migration is high in these states, that means Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra. The study says that the states were relatively better developed than the rest of the country, were also host to more migrants. That means relatively better developed states, they are attracting more migrants. And here another important aspect is the states whichever have got higher TFR, total fertility rate. If you look at states like Bihar, if you look at states like Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, they have higher TFRs close to 2.7, 2.8, something like that. If you look at Kerala, if you look at Tamil Nadu, the TFR is 1.4, 1.5. So, that means more young population in some states. So, another important aspect is in some states where the TFR is less, say 1.4, 1.5, something like that, there is not much younger population, and whatever the younger population is there, they have migrated to some other places in search of better opportunities. If you look at Kerala, almost 8 to 10% population is in fact in other countries, right? So, if you look at these statistics, what you can conclude, there is a demand for workforce in some of the areas and there is excess manpower in some of the areas. So, therefore, migration is inevitable, right. So, migration is inevitable because of several reasons. The population in some states has grown at a lesser pace in comparison to some of the states. So, therefore, this migration is inevitable. And another important aspect is the migrant workers are working at lesser rates in comparison to the native population. That means, if you take a person born and brought up in Kerala, say for example, daily wages may be very high, and here the migrant laborer, say from Jharkhand or Odisha, they may be able to work with lesser wages. So, that is another area where a lot of migration is taking place, right. So, these are the important aspects, please go through them. And what are the main reasons for such type of incidents on migrants? First and the foremost is trust deficit. There is lack of trust. If you look at the citizen and government, citizen and fellow citizen, and whatever way you look at it, there is a lot of trust deficit and unemployment and fear of the locals that migrants are snatching away the jobs, right. Whenever they are seeing the migrants, there is a feeling that the locals are having the feeling that migrants are snatching away the jobs. And social media and the spread of fake news virally, this is another reason. Agrarian distress is another reason. Youth not interested in agriculture, right, and politics at play. Then insider and outsider syndrome. Insider and outsider syndrome is there. There are several politics. Parochial political environment. That means a narrow-minded political environment in several states. The meaning of parochial political environment is a narrow-minded political environment. Migrants staying away from families for longer durations, that has its own social implications. Then migrant workers are willing to work at cheaper rates when compared to native workers. That is another reason why migration is taking place. And that is also the ear of the local population, right. Technological interventions wiping out several jobs, and the society is divided on caste, religion, right. You can write number of reasons why the incidents on migrants are taking place, right. So, this is preliminary discussion and on migration, both the internal migration and when you look at the migration across the boundaries, it requires a 360-degree view about the social implications, economic implications and all the relevant aspects. Right friends, let us conclude this discussion here. Let us look at the third one, teaming up with Tokyo. The Prime Minister is going to visit Tokyo shortly. In this context, this article is written, and yesterday the Hindu, synergies of India and Japan. Synergies of India and Japan on maritime security and connectivity can effectively counter the rise of China in the region. That means more and more aspects on maritime security, then connectivity. All of you are familiar with the proposed projects of Japan in the northeastern part of the country. At the same time, Asia-Africa growth corridor, and already there is perception in several countries that Chinese projects are in fact pushing them into debt trap. Under these circumstances, if properly planned, Asia-Africa growth corridor can be one alternative. So, like that, you can continue the discussion, right. So, this is Japan and our Prime Minister is going to visit. Japan is part of East Asia, please don't forget. And Japan's recent actions towards maritime security. Japan is keen to strengthen. All of you are familiar with this Malabar exercises, and Japan keen to strengthen trilateral Malabar exercises with India and the US, and you can go through this. Recently, Japanese Navy in the Malabar exercises at Guam deployed a maritime surveillance aircraft and a submarine. And please do not forget, here Guam Island is here in the Pacific Ocean, and Guam belongs to United States of America. Please don't forget, it is in the Pacific Ocean, and Japan demonstrated its readiness for strategic role in Asia's sensitive littorals. Littorals means the areas adjacent to the shoreline. Littoral countries, sometimes you come across littoral countries. Littoral countries means the countries adjacent